quarterbacks started changing plays at the line of scrimmage when they saw Ray Lewis move. Not after the snap, not after the tackle, but before anything happened. Just his positioning, just the threat of what he might do. And every time an NFL defense starts terrifying people again, the same comparison comes back. Different team, different era, but the same name. The 2000 Baltimore Ravens. Analysts talk about the records, the points allowed, the bodies that hit the turf every Sunday. But that wasn't the real difference. 8 months before that season started, Ray Lewis was standing in an Atlanta courtroom wondering if his career was already over. 2 questions came out of that moment. How did a middle linebacker from a brand new franchise turn one violent, record-setting season into the standard every great defense since has been measured against? And what invisible switch flipped in Ray Lewis in 2000, coming off a murder case that turned him from a great linebacker into the kind of presence that made an entire league feel like it was playing on his terms? Bartow, Florida, Polk County, the kind of place where ambition either gets you out or gets you buried. Ray Lewis was the oldest of 5. His mother was a teenager when she had him. His father was somewhere else. She held it together alone. What that does to a kid depends entirely on the kid. For Lewis, it became obsession. Push-ups, sit-ups, 6 in the morning in the backyard when other kids were still asleep. He wasn't training for the NFL. He was training for something more immediate. Control over a life that kept threatening to slip sideways. That wiring never left him, and it's the only way to explain what happened in 2000. Miami offered a scholarship. He took it, became a freshman starter immediately, which didn't happen there. By the time he left, he didn't need validation. The Ravens took him 26th, more than 20 picks after Jonathan Ogden. A brand new franchise, no history, no identity. Lewis walked in and became both. By year 2, he was leading the NFL in tackles and calling the defense like he'd been doing it his whole life. That's not development, that's arrival. But let's be honest about what the NFL looked like before 2000. Lewis was great. Everyone knew it. He made Pro Bowls. He stacked All-Pro selections. The football people understood what they were watching. The casual fan? Not quite. Because greatness at linebacker is invisible when the team's record is mediocre. When your quarterback is a placeholder. When the offense never gives the defense enough credit to be the story. The Ravens were building towards something. But building towards something and being something are separated by a gap that most teams never close. 2000 was supposed to be the year Lewis finally broke through to the national conversation. Except, January of that year happened first. The Atlanta case had been debated for 2 decades. 2 men were killed. Ray Lewis was there. He was charged with murder, pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice, testified against 2 co-defendants, and months later, walked into an NFL season. The media consensus was that his legacy was finished, that even if he played, the noise would follow him everywhere, that no amount of football could separate him from what happened in that parking lot. It sounded final. It wasn't. And here's the question nobody has really answered. What did that experience do to him? Something shifted between January and September 2000. Not publicly, internally. The case didn't break him. It narrowed him. The Ravens allowed 165 points in 16 games. That's 10.3 points per game. Some modern offenses score that in a quarter and a half. They allowed 970 rushing yards all season. 16 games, 60 yards a game. Teams regularly rush for more than that in the first half against respectable defenses. And in the postseason, they allowed one offensive touchdown. Those aren't great numbers. Those are numbers that look like a mistake when you read them. But here's what people miss when they credit Lewis with all of it. He wasn't doing it alone. Tony Siragusa and Sam Adams were collapsing interior lines so completely that running backs had nowhere to go before they even reached the second level. Rod Woodson was organizing the back end of that secondary with the same film room intelligence Lewis brought to the linebacking core. And defensive coordinator Marvin Lewis had built a scheme specifically designed to keep Ray clean, to let him flow freely to the ball without getting caught in traffic. The machine existed to free the engine. which means the records weren't just Lewis, but the fear. That part was him. The machine created the conditions. Ray Lewis created the dread, and Ray Lewis was the center of all of it architecturally. He was the person who told everyone where to go, the read key, the adjustment mechanism. When offensive coordinators watched film on Monday, they weren't drawing up schemes against a defense, they were drawing up schemes against him, trying to figure out how to hide plays from a linebacker who processed information at a speed that seemed, in retrospect, almost unfair. The specific behavior that separates him from other great linebackers? Quarterbacks started changing plays at the line when they saw him shift. Not after the snap, before it. Offenses started avoiding parts of the field entirely. By week 4, teams weren't pressing the ball into his zone. Offensive coordinators stopped calling certain plays entirely when Lewis was on the field. The 2000 AFC Championship game was in Oakland, the Black Hole. 50,000 people who treated their own stadium like a psychological warfare operation. Raiders fans don't just watch games, they perform them in a way that's designed to make visiting players feel small and unwelcome. Ray Lewis was not small. He was not unwelcome anywhere he'd already decided to own. The Ravens won 16-3. Lewis had 5 tackles, 2 assists, 2 passes defended, and a fumble recovery. But the box score misses the actual story, which is what happened on the sideline and before the snap. The Raiders' offensive line spent the whole game trying to account for where he was. Rich Gannon spent the whole game getting comfortable with a read, seeing what he wanted to see, and then having to abort it at the last second when Lewis slid into the hole he was targeting. That's not disruption, that's control. After the game, a Ravens lineman described the sideline between possessions as watching a general running a war room. Lewis paced, pointing, diagramming with his hands, screaming corrections, not just pumped up, calculating. Furious and precise simultaneously, which is a combination that very few athletes ever achieve, because fury usually costs you accuracy. Lewis somehow had both, at maximum volume. Super Bowl 35, Tampa, the New York Giants. Kerry Collins was not a bad quarterback. He was capable. He'd led the Giants to the NFC Championship the year before. He had weapons. He had a running game. He had every reason to believe his offense could move the ball against a defense that, on paper, was elite but not invincible. He completed 15 of 39 passes, 4 interceptions. The Giants scored 7 points on a kick return. The Ravens won 34-7, and by the third quarter, it felt less like a football game than a controlled demolition. Lewis was everywhere. Not everywhere the way highlights make defenders look everywhere. Actually everywhere, in real time, because his processing speed was so far above everyone on that field that he was consistently 2 steps ahead of what the offense intended. Collins would scan right, and Lewis was already there. Collins would check down, and Lewis was collapsing on the outlet before the receiver could turn upfield. He was named Super Bowl MVP, the first defensive player to win the award in 19 years. And in the locker room after, Lewis, who had walked into that season under the weight of a murder charge, a plea deal, and a media consensus that he was finished, stood with a Super Bowl trophy and said, "And now they want to question my legacy?" He wasn't wrong to ask. The question after a season like 2000 was simple. Could he do it again? 2001, first team All-Pro. 2003, another Defensive Player of the Year. For most linebackers, that would define a career. For Ray Lewis, it barely moved the conversation. The league was changing too. Offenses spread the field. Running backs became receivers. Linebackers were suddenly asked to cover ground the position was never designed to cover. Lewis adapted. Then the injuries came. Shoulder, triceps, the slow mid-career stretch where the body starts presenting the bill for years of violent football. He missed time. Rebuilt himself, changed how he trained, tried to squeeze performance out of a body that no longer moved like it did at 25. It was messy, slow. At times, it looked like the end, but he kept finding a way back. By 2012, Ray Lewis was 37 years old when he tore his triceps in October. The assumption across the league was simple. His season was over, probably his career too. On January 2nd, 2013, Lewis gathered his teammates in a meeting room at the Ravens facility. They expected standard playoff preparation material, film, adjustments, the usual business of a team trying to get hot at the right time. He told them it was his last ride. Terrell Suggs cried. Players who had spent years alongside him sat in stunned silence, not because retirement was shocking. They'd all known it was coming eventually, but because of what it meant to hear him say it out loud. The emotional North Star of the franchise was telling them that this was the last chance to give him what he had given them for 17 years. A room full of professional football players sat there processing that weight before a single playoff snap had been taken. He came back from the triceps injury in time for the playoffs. The Ravens beat the Broncos in double overtime in one of the greatest games ever played. They beat the Patriots. They went to New Orleans. Super Bowl 47, Baltimore versus San Francisco. The lights went out. Literally, the power failed in the Superdome for 34 minutes, and when they came back, Lewis stood in the huddle, 37 years old with repaired triceps and a body held together by preparation and sheer refusal, and he looked at his teammates the way he always had, like the game was his. The Ravens won 34-31. Lewis walked off the field a champion for the second time. 13 years apart. Same franchise, same position, same ferocity. That's not a career arc, that's an argument. So, what's the actual answer to the question? What invisible switch flipped in Ray Lewis in 2000 that turned him from a great linebacker into something the league had never quite seen before and hasn't seen since? Here's the most honest version. He found a way to make catastrophic pressure productive. Not therapeutic, not healthy, productive. The case, the scrutiny, the guilt by association, the media writing his obituary in real time. None of it broke him, because he had been building the infrastructure to not break since he was a kid doing push-ups in a Bartow backyard with no father in the house and a mother holding everything together by herself. The foundation was always there. The 2000 offseason didn't create it. It just tested it at a temperature most people never face. And when he came out the other side, something had clarified. The gap between playing great football and playing football like your entire existence depends on it. He collapsed that gap in 2000 and never let it reopen. When offenses started adjusting before the play even began, they weren't reacting to speed, they were reacting to certainty and the fact that he never hesitated. 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, 1 Super Bowl MVP, 13 Pro Bowls, 7 first-team All-Pro selections, a first-ballot Hall of Fame induction in 2018. And still, when a defense starts to scare people, someone pulls up the tape from 2000. Not because we don't have other examples, because we don't have anything better. That's not legacy, that's a standard. And 25 years of attempts haven't cleared it. If this is the first time you've actually watched that 2000 defense beyond the highlights, go find full game tape from the AFC Championship. Watch what Ray Lewis did before the snap. It'll change how you watch linebackers forever. And drop in the comments, is there a current defense in the NFL that's in the same conversation as the 2000 Ravens? I want to see the case made. Subscribe if you want the next one. We're going somewhere you won't see coming.